Hello and welcome back to the WABAN podcast. I am your host, Nim, and I am joined here by the Boulder.
The boulder has fought a little girl and lost.
Yes, you have a little blind girl, actually.
Yeah.
So, add the blind fact in, that makes it even more humiliating.
I remember the start of that episode, I saw the title card, The Blind Bandit, and I immediately got excited because I knew Toph was coming.
Yep. We'll definitely get into that episode. So here we are talking about the first half of season 2 of Avatar. So the first 10 episodes you watched in the past week, and I finished Avatar in the past week. So I was rewatching it, and I rewatched it in about a week. The entire show.
I'm trying to keep everything fresh. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the thing is, I've rewatched the show so many times in the past, since I first watched it. So I watched the show for the first time ever in this past fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
And ever since then, I've already watched it. That was my third time rewatching it since then. So everything's pretty clear in my brain about what each episode is, and
yeah,
So I was like, I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
and to be honest,
I'm usually not the kind of person to rewatch stuff unless I have forgotten most of it and just want to rewatch it.
Yeah. Usually I don't rewatch things that soon, but it's so the first time was just watching it for the first time, and the next time it was because I wanted to watch it with my girlfriend and her roommate. We watched it, and that was closer to the beginning of this semester.
Right.
In they have an apartment at the college that I go to, and then we just watched it closer to the end of the semester because we were all really just wanted to rewatch it because we quote it all the time and stuff, and it's our favorite thing. So we were like, let's just rewatch it. 1 week later, we were done rewatching it. It's funny because we'll watch other shows that are around the same length, and it'll take us forever to watch.
Yeah, but you Avatar, just can't stop Avatar.
We start and we're just let's just keep watching. Next thing you know, we just watched 10 episodes in one day. Oh, okay. Literally happens every time.
8 hours later. When that happened?
Pretty much. It's a really bingeable show for sure.
Yeah. It's taken a lot to cut myself off at 10 episodes at a time.
Yeah, that's that's definitely difficult, especially if you're left on a cliffhanger like this time you probably were, because episode 10 is a huge cliffhanger, but we'll get into that. So I guess we'll just kind of start from the first one. Also, by the way, I have allergies right now, so if I'm sniffling a lot and sneezing occasionally, yeah, it's allergy season, so woo, makes podcasts real fun to listen to. So the first episode of the season is Avatar Day, the Avatar State. No, Avatar Day's later. Whoops. The Avatar State. There we go.
Okay. So then they went to the Earth. What was that place? I don't remember what that place was called.
But it was some sort of it was basically a military fortress, I think. It wasn't a town or a specific town or city. It was specifically a military base, I think.
And the commander of that place was trying to force him into the Avatar State.
Right, because he's well, you have enough power to take on the Fire Lord in the Avatar State, so just do that. I can't control it. And then, they tried different methods, and it doesn't work. And Aang's like, you know what, maybe I have to do this the right way by slowly learning the elements and taking my time. And then the dude kind of goes crazy and is like, haha, I'm going to attack you and force you into it. And then it doesn't work. And then, I'm going to attack the girl that you love.
And they finally turn in the Avatar State and destroys the military base.
Yeah, they accomplished nothing. The thing is, at the end of the day, he's like, it worked, but they accomplished nothing. They didn't
just have to figure out how to control it, and Saga just whacks him.
Exactly, that's the thing. Is you literally, all you did was trigger it, which has already happened in the past.
Mm-hmm.
The way you trigger it is, get him really like emotional, and then it'll trigger it. That's like okay, like you haven't gotten anywhere close to your goal, which is being able to control it.
Yeah. They also do establish that if he dies in the Avatar state, that's the end of the Avatar.
Oh, right. Which that becomes really important closer to the end of the season. Also, the whole trying to master the Avatar state is a really important thing closer to the end of the season too. So, like, I really like that they kind of open with that. It's like a good, like, that sort of becomes like kind of a theme throughout the season. Not extremely, like they don't bring it up all the time necessarily,
they just kind of like plant that seed. And they let it sit there for a while, and it's like, it's going to come up at some point later, but
it becomes important closer to the end of the season. It's like, which we'll talk about that more next time. But so I think it's a nice little opening, and
I just love the moment where Sokka just knocks out the commander after all of this happened. And he's just like, anyone have a problem with that? And they're just like, nope, we're good.
Nope. Yeah, all the other soldiers are just kind of like, after seeing what he did in the Avatar state, we don't want to do that again.
Let's just back off.
Our commander's a little insane right now.
This also made me remember, I had an old DS game of Avatar that went from like, there was like all of season 2.
Yeah. That's actually cool.
And basically, like, every part of it was in there. Like, the entire story was in there, and it was pretty... I remember playing it a lot. I don't remember if it was actually a good game, but I know little boy me was pretty happy about it.
I mean, yeah. If I watched Avatar as a kid and then played a game like that as a kid, I would have loved it, like... It's kind of like how, like, when I was a kid, I loved the Star Wars movies. So when I played Lego Star Wars, it was just great. I got to play through some of my favorite movies, so definitely a good way to open it, and sort of,
plant a seed that will grow later in the series, and.
We also, in this episode, have like a lot of these episodes, there's a story going on with like the main group, and then also you follow something with Zuko. The Zuko Iroh story is like at the beginning, they're in the Earth Kingdom. Zuko has lost everything, right? He doesn't have his ship and his men anymore. All he has is him and his uncle traveling in the Earth Kingdom, right? And he's like, it is now the anniversary of 3 years since he was banished, right?
Right.
And Azula shows up, like, and she's essentially, this is Azula's introduction as a character. I mean, technically there was a little hint, like it showed her for a second at the end of the last season, like as like here's a character who's coming. Soon.
But this is actually what it establishes her real personality.
Right. And I must say her introduction is just so good. Like as soon as she
you really learn to hate her immediately.
Like that conversation she has with that guy. The guy's like, the tides won't let us go into shore, and she's like, do the tides command the ship? And then she's like, her whole thing about like threatening this guy into being like,
the line of, stop worrying about the tides who have already decided that they would kill you, and start worrying about me who is still on the fence about it. Like, okay, lady.
Yep. And then like she says like, oh, our father is letting you guys come back, and Iroh's a little iffy about it. He's like, this seems weird. And then like the one guy accidentally calls them prisoners.
Yeah,
take the prisoners on. And there was like a look in Azula's face where I'm like, after all this is said and done, she's gonna murder that guy. Like, she's like that guy has a look of fear on his face. He's like, shit, what did I just do?
Great, I'm dead. Oh no.
Pretty much. I love that.
There's a little fight between Zuko and Azula, but he loses. But then Iroh comes in and saves him, and it's like
with lightning redirection.
Yeah, I love the lightning bending. Like even if it's mainly Azula's thing, and she's like very mean, but just Iroh jumping in and just like saving him and just blasting out in a different direction is awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like at this point, you don't really know much about lightning bending. It's just kind of like it's a new thing at this point, and like you don't really understand the significance of the lightning redirection either.
Right.
Which we will get into more as we go on too. So we should probably move on. We don't want to spend too much time talking about this. I mean, if this podcast ends up being an hour and a half long, who cares? But
it's fine.
It's fine. Yeah, it is. It is.
Episode 2.
Episode 2. So now the gang's main goal is to travel to Omashu because he's like, oh, I'll have Boomy as my earthbending teacher. So this episode is essentially them traveling to Omashu, right? The Cave of Two Lovers.
Right. Okay.
So this episode is hilarious.
Yes, I love this episode.
The hippie Avatar hippies, Avatar World's version of hippies in here. But yeah, they have to travel underground. Aang and Katara kiss for the first time, so that's cool. I love the. I said I'd rather kiss you than die. That's a compliment. I love that.
Aang is very good with the ladies, I have to say.
Oh yes, very good, very good.
I do love the because he sang the song of the Cave of Two Lovers, but he's in the middle. He's like, and I forget the next few lines, but there it goes.
And die. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I remember the rest of the song. And die.
That's what I'm talking about. I love that line because it's just like so. Oh right, finally I remember this song that for some reason I could not remember, and it says just as simple as "and die."
Yep. And then there's like the lights they have. It's like one of these will last 2 hours, and we have 5 of them, so that'll last 10 hours as she lights all of them. Sokka, it doesn't work like that if you light them all at the same time. Also, if you can hear anything in the background, that's somebody vacuuming. I'm hoping it's not coming in too much on here on the podcast.
I don't hear it, but I have my volume pretty low, so
okay. So hopefully we're at least somewhat good. So basically, so I don't know if there's a lot to say about this. Like the main sort of gist of this episode is they're traveling to Omashu as far as like far as the plot is concerned.
There's also that it advances Katara and Aang's relationship a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess it also establishes that Appa doesn't like being underground, which ends up leading to some things.
Yes, that is also true. So yeah, it's
a simple episode, but it's an enjoyable episode.
It is a very enjoyable episode. But it ends with a nice little cliffhanger. They're like arrive at Omashu. I love how like Sokka learns nothing throughout the episode. The people are trying to teach him how it's like you got to enjoy it's not about the destination. It's about it's the journey to get there. And at the end, he's like, I think we can all learn a lesson that it's all about the destination. Sokka's like the destination is the only thing that matters. So he learned nothing from them.
With a line, Katara, Aang, how'd you get out? Oh, we just trusted in love. And it's like, oh, really? We trust in giant, hairy animal beasts. I was like pointing at the, what is it, badger
moles? Yeah. But, but like, so there's that moment at the end, though, where it's like, he's like, welcome to Oma. And he goes, oh, no.
Yeah. It has the Fire Nation logo on it.
Yep. So cliffhanger for the next episode, which is titled "Return to Omashu." So this is the first time the gang meets Azula. This is also the first time we're introduced to May and Ty Lee. So that's cool. So they go to Omashu, basically. It's taken over by the Fire Nation.
They search for Boomy for an earthbending teacher, as well as to see if he's okay. And they meet the rebellion.
Right, and they...
Like, why are you still here? Just leave so you can, survive. And they're like, okay.
It's our home. And then he's like, well, yeah, it's kind of already lost. Like, you can get it back later on, which is sort of the lesson you're learning in here is like, what you learn when Aang talks to Boomy, which is like the whole, like, it's better to like sometimes just kind of like wait for the right moment instead of just being like, oh, we must fight and take it back now. Like, no, it's not the right moment. Like, let it sit for a while.
That leads to how he looks for his earthbending teacher from there.
Somebody who waits and listens. And I think the key is there is like listen because, Toph, his eventual earthbending teacher, is blind. So focuses a lot more on the listening than sight, obviously, because, she can't see it all.
Somewhat less important, but entertaining point. The way that they get everyone out of the city with the little...
the pentapox.
Yeah. The little, like, octopus.
I swear I've heard of that before. Didn't your cousin die of that? Yeah, that was a fun little thing.
And then they ended up accidentally taking the Lord's child. So they're like, oh no, what do we do?
Which they used to trade with Boomy.
I love how that Boomy's the entire time he's just laughing and having fun.
He's like, oh, hi, Aang, haha. And then
he's just like earthbends while he's encased, and
he goes, you could earthbend this whole time. He's like, they didn't cover up my face. So he just moves his face to earthbend instead of his limbs.
He just violently looks upward and like flexes his chin, and he just shoots himself back up the pipe or whatever you want to call it, the chute.
Yeah. But yeah, so you find out Aang's can't use Boomy as his earthbending teacher. Oh no, he's got to find a new one. So this leads to then next kind of big plot point after this is their big goal is who's Aang's earthbending teacher.
Right.
Because there's like no clear answer to that anymore. So it kind of makes it interesting. Another interesting point in this episode is, so you get introduced to May and Ty Lee, right? But you also kind of get introduced to the sort of friendship they have with Azula. So like,
the very odd and not quite healthy friendship.
Right. So, especially with Ty Lee, because like May is just kind of in the city for most of it because her like dad is in charge of the city. And then at the end, Azula shows up and she's like, oh, finally, something to do,
Yeah, normal. She's just all on board right away because she's bored.
Right. But like Ty Lee didn't want to join because she wanted to stay in the circus, and Azula basically just
threatened her into it,
but like subtly threatened her. She didn't like technically threaten her. She's just like
subtle.
Well, no, but like it was subtle in the sense that she didn't like say, "Oh, you're coming with me," or "I'm going to do this." It was like, "Oh, I'm going to go to your show tonight," and then like you could see that look in her face. She's like, "Oh," when she said that, she's like, "Oh, yeah." Like she's terrified that she's going to a show.
On fire and releases all the animals. Like, yeah, this is much more entertaining while Ty Lee is just panicking on the tightrope.
Right, but like the thing I like about it is like she does it in the sense of like, oh, I'm just trying to make the show more entertaining, but her real motivation is, oh, I'm trying to scare her into coming with me, which sort of establishes the way she sort of controls her friends through fear. Like it's not like, oh, my friends do things for me because they're good friends and because they love me. Like it's because they're afraid of me, which becomes a really important thing as it goes on. Especially like when you see the friendships sort of fall apart in season 3, but that's further down the line. But It's a good way to set that up, though. I love that it like sets that idea up here.
And not to mention her like martial art, I guess, where she like attacks the pressure points and then Katara can't bend anymore. That's like a major thing because bending is their entire thing for the most part.
Well, yeah, it's the chi blocking.
As far as like fighting goes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like she blocks their chi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that sort of makes her that's sort of what makes her a threatening villain throughout it. Even though like she's not really evil.
Yeah,
she's just kind of doing it because Azula wants her to, and like
you really can't bring yourself to hate her because you just kind of like
she's constantly happy and positive about everything.
Yeah, it's less like you're being maliciously attacked and more like a child is somehow beating you up.
Right. Like I could never see her like killing somebody that she's attacking. Like she just kind of pokes them a little bit, blocks their chi for a little bit so they can't fight back, and like that's all she would do. You know what I mean? Like I can't. Whereas Azula, Azula will kill you. You know what I mean? You never see her kill somebody because I feel like they probably weren't allowed to show that in the show.
They didn't even show, or I guess that might arguably be worse. But like Zuko getting his face burned, they cut out for that.
Yeah.
Like any,
which you could almost say makes the scene more effective. In a way, because it's it's more like what your imagination comes up with is like far worse than what they could have shown you, kind of idea.
There's it might be one of the Batman animated series. Well, it is one of them, but I don't remember which one. But they were talking about something like in a child's TV show, you can't show like people getting killed or anything like that.
Yeah.
So the bar for like what's the worst thing that they can do warps, and not in a good way. So I remember like in the specific Batman animated series that I'm talking about, which I don't remember which one, I think one of the Robins was like fed like chemicals by the Joker and turned into like a little mini Joker, and he couldn't stop laughing, and he was just like, this is a kid's show, and this kid in the show is like that. You feel horrid for him.
Yeah. So that scene, I know what you're talking about. That was in one of the movies based on the shows.
Okay.
So it was so the show Batman Beyond, which was a spin-off of Batman the Animated Series from the 90s. Batman Beyond was like late 90s, I think.
Okay.
And this movie was Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, I think. And that was like a flashback scene because so Batman Beyond, the show, is about like the next Batman. So like Bruce Wayne's really old, and then it's like it's futuristic, and there's Terry McGinnis is like the next Batman. It's like
I remember this.
And then this is like a flashback scene to like when Bruce Wayne was younger and what happened to Robin. But yeah, that's what it's from. Yeah. So it took me like, once you started saying like, oh, what was happening, I was like, I remember where that's from. But yeah. It's like, it is kind of interesting how it's like, you want to show something that's like intense, but like you can't just show normal violence because it's a kid's show. So they have to like be creative with it.
And it gets so much worse when they do.
And it's almost more disturbing than just showing some blood, Yeah. I kind of like that though. Like
it's
that's really
an interesting effect.
Right. It makes it more intriguing. But yeah. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. So yeah, that episode, Return to Omashu, good episode. Probably should move on unless you have anything more to say about that episode.
Just that I liked the line between someone said to Katara, like, what are you going to do without your bending? And then Sokka rides in on Appa and throws his boomerang, just saying, like, I get along just fine. I just remembered that moment. I really liked it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's right. Yeah, no, I like that. Those little like things that show that he's like, yeah, I can get by without the bending. It's really cool.
Because like in fights, he can't be like as good as the benders, or else like bending won't have as much of a point to it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
he like
yeah.
still supports them, and he doesn't like directly fight usually, but he does support and figure out clever ways to help in combat.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what establishes him as like an important part of the group, because like people always think like, oh, well, if he can't do the bending, what's his, why is he an important character? As far as like, I mean, obviously he's an important character as far as like the sort of character interactions and, whatever like character development stuff goes, but like as far as like the battles and stuff and the
Yeah,
what's, you know, so it really helps establish him
it
as.
avoids him being useless in any sense.
Yeah, exactly, which is really cool. I like that a lot. But yeah, so anyways, I don't know if there's much else to say on that. So we can move on to the next episode, which is The Swamp.
Right. The
So
hillbilly swamp boys.
I was gonna say this is the introduction to um Avatar's version of
Rednecks?
rednecks, yes. So yeah.
So they get. This is a very odd episode because it's just
Yes,
like
it
they
is.
get sucked into the swamp and they get separated, and they're all experiencing these hallucinations that you then later on learn that they mean something.
Mm-hmm.
So like Katara sees her mother and Sokka sees
UA.
Yue. Thank you. And like they establish that the swamp sees people that you've lost, but
Or
Aang saw.
somebody he was going to meet.
Yeah, because I guess he's the avatar and that changes it, which
Right.
is kind of weird, but still makes somewhat sense.
Well, he said time he said the line, he's like, people you thought you lost or whatever, like, and he's like, time is an illusion and people are never really gone or whatever. And Aang's like, wait, he's like, so time is an illusion. So he's like, so that means it's somebody I will meet. So like it's kind of a
Right,
cool little
right.
thing. Which
And you later
obviously.
learn that it's Toph that he saw,
Right.
which is, it leads to a bunch of other stuff when he actually meets Toph, which is nice.
Yes. Um, yeah, because I remember the first time I watched it, I was just like, what is he seeing? Like, it made no sense to me, but it was
Yeah, it
like,
was
oh.
a little girl in
Um,
white wandering around and giggling, and then the flying pig. It's like, what is this?
yeah. Um, mm-hmm,
I also
yeah.
really love the. Well, before we talk about the swamp people, the one guy that was bending the water in the plants to make like this weird vine golem, and they're
Mm-hmm.
fighting really intensely, and then they finally like get him out of the golem thing, and they realize that like, oh wait, you were called here. Okay, here, let me help you. Like just complete 180 immediately.
But
Like,
like, yeah, like he didn't ask any questions before attacking them. He's just like, oh, you're destroying this place. Okay, you're done. Bye. uh,
it's just very like you couldn't have just like, I don't know, had a conversation beforehand and we could figure it out.
right. Have a conversation, and if they like said no, and if they turned out that they were just going to continue attacking the place or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe attack them. But like figure out what's going on first, and then yeah. I mean, these people are kind of weird, though. They're just.
And then the entire time, the swamp people are hunting Appa and Momo until finally the gang all meets up and they save them, and then they're having a meal together.
I know
Like, oh
what
yeah,
that
they're
is.
waterbenders. Oh, these are some odd waterbenders.
Yeah. I know what that is. That's a lemur. Yeah. So decent episode, I guess. There's nothing going on with Zuko in this episode. It's literally just the swamp story. So weird episode. I like that it introduces the whole concept of like the everything is connected thing.
Oh, right.
And like
because they mention that
because
the
that
entire forest is one tree, and
yeah,
it likens it to the world itself.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that's actually brought up again with the guru closer to the end of the season. The guru that you meet.
The guru? I don't remember this at all, by the way.
Who okay, we'll talk about that when we get to it.
Yeah.
But anyways, so yeah, cool episode. Next, we got Avatar Day.
Oh, yeah.
So
and on trial for murder. And he actually committed it.
And he actually, well, indirectly.
Well, yeah.
Kyoshi didn't directly kill Chin. Yeah.
There's the whole main plot point of this episode, which is the trial and figuring out who did it and what actually happened and blah blah blah. Then there's also all the new information about Avatar Kyoshi, and I just love all of that.
Yeah. No, and you see Avatar Kyoshi literally created an island.
Yeah, that's so cool.
That scene, I'm like, oh, I thought and that's what Kyoshi Island is. The island they went to in the first season and everything. It's just she created it. It wasn't originally an island. I think that's just really cool because I would, thinking about it, you think oh, it's naturally an island, a natural island, right?
Yeah, you never just you
but
won't
it turns
just
out,
guess that it's not just naturally formed.
Yeah, it turns out Kyoshi literally created it. So, the name is fitting, Kyoshi Island, because it was literally created by Kyoshi.
I just love that entire scene, though, because she's just standing, at the front, at the head of her army, facing whatever his name is, the Conqueror or the Great or whoever.
Chin the Great, Chin the Conqueror. He has both names, but...
And then she just goes, I don't want to deal with you anymore. And the entire earth just cracks in front of them, and she blows winds, and the entire island just moves away.
Yeah. It's cool. And there's she uses magma bending there too, because you can see the lava coming up when she breaks the earth away there. And she uses that to and then she uses wind to blow it out, and it's just amazing. Which it's kind of cool because it makes sense because it's okay, if you were able to bend all elements, theoretically you could do something like this if you were powerful enough at bending.
And there was a weird moment where her eyes flashed in the Avatar state, so you knew that she was about to do something big.
Yes. Right, because usually the Avatar state gives you extra power because it's the Avatar state is essentially, it's
all the avatars helping you out.
Yeah. It's having knowledge and of all the avatars, all the past avatars being in you, helping you.
I also just enjoy the fact that they just casually established that Kyoshi is a giant.
Oh yeah, she has the biggest feet out of any of the avatars, which is cool because it's you would, normally men have bigger feet than women, so you'd expect the one with the biggest feet would probably be a man, but they kind of flip that and nope, it's a woman. The biggest, strongest one is a woman.
But even besides cool. The feet, her standing in front of Shin, obviously Shin is very short, but also even looking at the background armies, she seems gigantic compared to them.
Was Shin short?
I would assume so. He seemed very short.
I don't know.
Plus, the footprint that he left was small.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah. Kyoshi is pretty big though. That's, she's also...
I did notice a like slight discongruency of like the Kyoshi like martial art that they do on the island is like using the opponent's force against them and not using your strength. But looking at Kyoshi, she did not need that at all. She looked like she was a powerhouse.
Yeah, but I feel like that's because it's like she like the I guess the idea behind that is that like the Kyoshi warriors are
Mainly
women,
women.
so
And
it's
so
like
not all of them have that like Kyoshi, yeah.
that Kyoshi level of strength. So it's like okay, so like let's say like men are like typically bigger and stronger than women. So how are women going to combat against men who are naturally like stronger than them? Oh, use their own force against them. You got to learn a different way of fighting. So it makes sense. But yeah, I do get your point though.
Yeah, Kyoshi didn't look like she needed that.
Definitely
She looked like
not.
she could just crack their skulls.
Pretty much, yeah. But I also this episode is also pretty funny. I mean, every episode has good comedy, but feel like we say that about like almost all of them. But like, I love Sokka going all Sherlock Holmes.
With the
It's just hilarious.
magnifying glass on his hat.
And he pulls out that pipe
The weird
thing,
dragon pipe, yeah.
and then and the guitar's just like, where did you get that?
The entire time, Katara is just like about to say something that's like, I like make a deduction. He's just like, do these props mean anything to you?
He's like, the hat, the pipe. Do these things mean anything to you? We'll solve the mystery. And he pushes her out of. He's just about to say it, and then he like pushes her out of the way to say what he's gonna say, and then after he says it, she smacks him over the head with the pipe.
I do also love the fact that the monocle, the magnifying glass on the hat, just like spins around every once in a while.
Yeah, love those little details like that. It's great. Realistically, this episode isn't that important for the overarching story, but
I mean, it establishes a lot of lore.
Oh yes, it's definitely good, especially like Kyoshi lore around Kyoshi and Shin,
And the
Shin
island.
the Conqueror, and Kyoshi Island. But like as far as like the story of the show, it doesn't really add a whole lot to that. Besides like the Zuko and Iroh story, which is that's important. But like the main story is kind of like, but like it's fine because it's a pretty great episode.
It is a great
episode.
What is the Zuko and Iroh story again? I've forgotten.
So this one is pretty simple, but it's also important. So throughout it, Zuko is going around as the blue spirit, robbing people, basically. So that way,
stealing because he doesn't like being in poverty.
And then at the and then Iroh has that whole like speech where he's like, oh, he gives him like the really nice teapot, and he's like, do you like this teapot? And Iroh's like, to be honest, I like tea just as much if it's in a porcelain pot or a tin cup or something. He says something like that, and he's like, there's a simple honor in poverty or whatever. And at the end, this is the one where at the end Zuko decides to leave Iroh,
right?
Which is really important for like what happens next with Zuko. But yeah, so. Really good episode. I say that about most episodes.
They're all really good, though. It's all true.
Yeah, especially this season. This season is just like perfect. Okay. Next we have the Blind Bandit.
Oh hell yeah!
Introduction to Toph. I love the introduction to Toph here because it's like. Well, the first time you see her is as the Blind Bandit, and then you see her. Then later on, you see her as like her fake version of herself that she shows to her parents, which is like
in distress,
the poor little blind girl. But like seeing her fight is just awesome. The way they animate her fighting and everything is like really cool.
And like especially how they visualize how she sees the world with
Mm-hmm.
the vibrations going to the floor and meeting her feet and then going back.
Which, by the way, is a very creative way to create an earthbending character, because like
Yeah.
making an earthbender blind is just a really cool idea that like I would have never really thought of, but like it makes sense when the way it works here, because she can't see, she uses her
She's
earth
like
bending to feel the vibrations. Yeah.
she's like a mole or like another burrowing animal that's mostly blind.
But this is just a great introduction to the character. You kind of see like she loves like fighting and stuff, which is like
Yeah.
also really important for her
And she's
character.
very like cocky and confident about it too.
She's yeah.
Calling Aang twinkle toes and all that.
Yeah. And I I think it's a really good like, kind of it's really cool to see somebody who's like blind, who has like some sort of like, what would normally be seen as like, oh, a disability or whatever, but like
It helps her.
it becomes her strength, and it's
Yeah.
like really cool to see a character like that. So yeah. Also, one thing that I think is just hilarious is I love how they're at the fight and how into it Sokka is.
Yeah.
He's just immediately an earth bending fighting fan, like immediately. He's never seen it before ever in his life, and he's suddenly like the biggest fan of the boulder.
When the Fire Nation guy gets thrown into the stance right by him, and he just starts screaming out like, "Yeah!"
Yeah, he's like, "Go back to the Fire Nation," and he like throws a rock at him or something.
He's just like, and Katara's there, just constantly, just like, this is just gonna be a bunch of guys punching each other, and it's like that's exactly what I paid for.
That's exactly what I paid for. I love because like it just shows how much like Sokka is just such a dude,
He's
right?
a
Like
dude,
he's just such a man, right? He's just like, yeah, fighting, woo. It's just hilarious. And then Aang comes up and he starts going. He's like, Aang is like losing. No, what happens? He like starts booing Aang, and she's like, "Don't boo him." She just like hits him. Don't boo at him. Well, actually, Aang goes up and he's like, "Yeah, avenge the boulder." Because
right.
Toph beat the boulder.
Right. Aang goes up. He says, "Don't avenge the boulder."
I love it.
But then Aang is trying to convince Toph just to talk, and Sokka's just like, "No, talking."
Oh yeah, that's when he's like, "Boo!" And then she's like, "Don't boo at him." Yeah, that's what it was. But then like the fight at the end where like she takes on all of the earthbending fighters.
Mm-hmm. And she's they're about to all fight them together, and Toph's just like, "No, I want to do this alone." And she
like her
does
dad's
perfectly.
reaction, her dad and her earthbending teacher are watching like, what? Because they thought she was like,
blind
not
girl.
good at all. And I just love it's animated so well. I love the fight. Like there's like those slow motion shots of her like head slightly like turning while she's like sensing over in this. There's like a lot of really cool like it's just animated so well. And watching her fight is like one of the reasons why earthbending is like one of my favorite bending styles. It might be my favorite, just like visually speaking. I just really love watching earthbending fights.
Right.
And her style, like how she fights with them in this scene, might be one of the reasons why. I just love it. It's great.
You think about it, and think about like the way Toph fights. It is completely possible that like she is like no other earthbender could beat her, because they need to be rooted to the ground, and as long as they're rooted to the ground, Toph can perfectly see every one of their movements.
Well, yeah, like notice she's very precise with her movements too. So like notice how like the first time you see her earthbend, she when she's fighting the boulder, and it's like the boulder's like he's like trying to like he's like trash talking her like the boulder,
The boulder.
He's conflicted about fighting a blind girl, and she's Indian, whatever. And then he starts to like come at her, and then she sits there, assesses the situation, and just gives one precise kick to the ground that goes and like causes him to do a split. It's just a very precise kick, and then just throws him off with another precise hit. Like, I love how like a lot of times like you see earthbenders, they're just kind of throwing earth around everywhere, throwing rocks,
it's like a
and
direct
it's like
force, and that's it. While she's like,
she
still
has
a lot
these
of force, but it's more precise.
She has these very specific, precise hits instead of like throwing a bunch of stuff at you, which I think is really cool.
I do like the like whole rock paper scissors aspect of it, because like the way she fights, the earthbenders in the arena can't beat her, but then Aang comes in and he really doesn't touch the ground all that much, and she can't notice the wind coming at her. It's so like she can't really do anything.
But like it's kind of cool though. That's kind of where she gets the nickname Twinkle Toes, right? Is because he's really light on his feet, and that's why and she can tell how light he is on his feet, because that's how she can sense that it's him. Like if he's walking towards her, she goes, oh, that's Aang. I know those footsteps, So it makes sense that a character like her would come up with a nickname like that. So I love little like details like that. It's just really cool to like,
There's also the whole thing of she was pretending the entire time to be the little blind, frail girl for her father. And then when that finally is revealed, it's like she confidently reveals that, this is who I am, and I want to go with the Avatar and help him, blah, blah, blah. Which is like, that alone is like, it's a really nice scene because it's very, empowering. And then her dad just shuts it all down.
Yeah.
But it also, it adds a lot to Toph's character as well. Because she's like, you know what? I tried being reasonable. Now I'm just gonna, run away.
Yeah, she just, yeah. Which fits with her character because she's very like, that she would just kind of like run away at that point instead of like trying to like only following what her father tells her. I guess we should probably move on to the next episode.
I guess.
So I love this next episode. I mean, I love all of them, but Zuko Alone is the next one.
Right. Is this... This is the one where he meets like the kid and helps him out and everything, right?
Yeah, and it's also includes like flashbacks to more backstory with Zuko, where you see...
But does this episode even have an avatar and crew?
No.
It doesn't.
Right. And I mean, it is titled Zuko Alone. So it makes sense. It's about Zuko. Well, because it's the episode about... Because the last time we saw Zuko, he left Iroh. So now this is the episode all about him being on his own. What happens when he was on his own. And it's all focused on Zuko. Right. So there's one really cool thing. So like at the beginning of the episode, he's traveling alone, right? And he sees these people like with they have like they're camping out or whatever, and he's like thinks about like he kind of like starts to pull out his sword like and because he's like it shows that like he's hungry, and he's like maybe I could steal food from him, and then he sees that the woman,
the lady, is pregnant,
and then he's like he decides no, which is a nice little hint that like there's some good in him and everything, which is I love that this show has a lot of little hints of that, but it's also cool because that couple shows up later on in the show.
Right, I thought I recognized them.
We haven't gotten to it yet because that's like episode 12 maybe.
Right, I vaguely remember that episode. It was they're trying to cross a passage over the water. Yeah. Okay.
But we'll talk about that next time because that's not in the first 10 episodes. But I like that little like attention to detail because that couple is like traveling to Ba Sing Se as like refugees, right? So it's like in this episode, when he passes them, they were probably traveling to Ba Sing Se, right? Like then and there, that was what they were doing in that episode when Zuko saw them, probably.
It's just a nice little detail.
But I think so. One of the cool themes of this episode is like Zuko trying to sort of find himself. Like he's sort of lost who he is almost. And because there's that moment closer to the end where he just like proudly declares, he's like, I am Zuko, rightful heir to the throne of the Fire Nation. Like he proudly declares who he is.
And then the old man is just like, wait, no, you're a liar. I heard of you. You were banished.
Yeah. Yeah, but like it's kind of interesting though, because like so throughout the episode he's bonding with this kid, right? And there's like the scene where he's like helping teach him how to use the swords and stuff. It's like really nice little bonding moments. But and then then when you get to the end where he finally like reveals who he is
and uses firebending in front of him,
you expect this is how I would expect that to go. Like the typical story would do a thing where like everybody's like, oh no, he's terrible. But then he goes up to the kid and the kid accepts him. And then everybody else is like, you know what? This kid was able to accept him, so maybe we should too. I thought it was going to go that route, but it didn't. The kid goes, I know, I hate you at the end. And that really hits hard because you saw them bonding throughout the episode with like him helping him with the swords and everything. And then he just saved them and then like fought those people to save him. And like, it's very heartbreaking, a heartbreaking ending. Cause it's like, this is where I think Zuko really starts to see just how much the Earth Kingdom hates the Fire Nation.
Yeah.
And just how much they're like hurt by the Fire Nation.
It kind of flips his whole introduction that he did on his head. Because he's like proudly declaring that, and everyone just hates him after that.
Right, exactly.
It's like, oh, maybe this isn't such a good thing.
Right. And I think that's sort of like this season is a really important journey for Zuko because, this season he has to travel through the Earth. Like in the last season, he's mostly traveling on a ship around different places, so he doesn't interact with the Earth Kingdom a lot. He's traveling technically through the Earth Kingdom on a ship, but like he doesn't, doesn't interact with them a lot. But in this season, he's traveling through.
It's probably more his subordinates doing it, or the uncle, which is much better at it.
Exactly. And so here he gets to fully see what the Earth Kingdom people are going through in this season. And that's a huge part of his character arc, is sort of like seeing what the rest of the world is like. Because in the Fire Nation, you're sort of always fed this propaganda of like, oh, the Fire Nation is the greatest nation in the world all the time. Like we're just, the war is just our way of sharing our prosperity with the rest of the world. And like all this, like, essentially just propaganda to make you side with the Fire Nation.
Did I hear that right?
I don't know. Propaganda, I think is what I meant to say. Whatever I said, I don't know. But anyways.
I thought I heard like 13 EDs in there.
Propaganda. But so like his journey through this season is really important to his character development, obviously. So, and this episode is one that really exemplifies that a lot. This is one of the really good episodes for that side of his character development.
I do also like the moment where he's like working on the roof with the father, and first of all, he did not seem to know what he was doing, because there was just like a bunch of nails in front of him all sticking into the wood.
He's a prince. Like, do you think he's ever worked a day in his life? I mean, come on.
Yeah. But also, well, that's a nice detail. But also the kid asking so many personal questions until finally, how'd you get that scar? Just completely innocently, and Zuko's just like, almost like hits his thumb or something, or whatever it was.
But yeah, it's kind of funny because it's like, it's very like childlike. It's like, oh, how did you get that scar? Like kids just being curious and asking random questions about things. Like it's really cool. But another thing I really like is the like sort of flashbacks that he's having throughout the episode.
Right.
So you get to see different
You see
things.
turtle ducks.
You
Those adorable little things.
You get to see turtle ducks. I love it. He's like, hey mom, this is how Azula feeds the turtle ducks. Throws it at him. Zuko, why would you do that?
And it establishes Zuko's mother in that moment, like as being like, she didn't like that he did that, but she was very calm and caring about telling him not to do that.
Yeah, she's the nice one of the parents, That's how Zuko turned out actually kind of nice, and Azula turned out, even though their father was so terrible. Okay, because, he had their money.
Yeah, it also establishes that Azula didn't just turn out terrible. Azula's been terrible.
Right, and a lot of that is definitely due to the fact that she probably took after her father a lot, in a lot of ways. Whereas Zuko took more after his mother. But it's interesting because you get the full story of so first off, you get the whole like Iroh leaving. He had the siege on Ba Sing Se for however many days was it, like 600 days or?
Yeah, it was something insane.
Maybe it wasn't 600. That might be more than what it was.
It was over a year, I think.
So it might, I don't remember exactly, maybe 500, something like that. Long siege trying to take Ba Sing Se. And he got the news that this is where you learn that he got the news that his son died.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when he left. So like you heard about the siege of Ba Sing Se and how he quit after so long or whatever before. But this is where you first like fully realize what it was.
Right.
And yeah, and you also kind of see like there was some sort of like connection between Zuko and Iroh. Like Iroh sends him the knife as like a gift, and it's like kind of a nice little thing. But yeah, and then that's what caused Iroh to leave, and it's kind of implied like Iroh kind of like left for a while and traveled the world a little bit, and that's where he started to also realize, the Fire Nation isn't great. Kind of the same way that Zuko is learning now. So it's kind of interesting. But
there is the whole plot point and storyline of first they get called in front of the Fire Lord, the whole family. Azula impresses everyone. Zuko tries to impress everyone, fails. His mom comforts him. But then after that entire thing, they all leave. His father, was talking to the Fire Lord, and they need to set a punishment for. He sets a punishment for him because he suggested of like betraying his firstborn.
And this punishment is that he kills his own son.
According to Azula, yeah, which
I believe is true. Yeah, it is.
But my entire thing of mentioning this was I had a theory that instead of killing his firstborn, because later in that night the mom came in and is like, I did everything to protect you, and leaves and is never seen again.
Yeah.
So what if he, instead of killing his son, he killed his wife?
I mean, that's not what it is.
Or it
is revealed later in season 3 what actually happened.
Well, here, I just thought of a better idea. What if he refused, and as punishment for that, the Fire Lord killed his wife, and then he killed the Fire Lord? I'm just making stuff up at this point.
I mean, none of that's... It is revealed what actually happened in season 3. So I wasn't sure if you remembered exactly how it happened.
At all.
So we'll wait till we get to that, and then we'll talk about that. But yeah, it's actually kind of interesting, because basically what you're not sure, because it's like, okay, so the Fire Lord Azulon dies. And
you don't know why.
You don't know what caused his death. And Zuko's mother just disappears.
And then
it doesn't say whether she died, if she was going somewhere, what was happening. It just she says like, basically says like, what I did to protect you, and then she's like, I have to leave, and then she leaves, and that's the last you see of her.
The whole thing of he becomes the Fire Lord, but he was specifically being punished because he wanted to become the Fire Lord over the firstborn son.
Right.
So, like, okay, what happened here?
So he established himself as the Fire Lord because Iroh was, like, gone.
Okay.
And couldn't, and, like, somebody had to take over because the Fire Lord died, but Iroh was gone and couldn't do it.
Mm.
But yeah, we can definitely talk more about that once it's, like, revealed in the next season more. Yeah, it's interesting stuff, actually.
Yeah.
But I also really like, so, like, the story, the flashbacks are somewhat parallel things that are happening, like, with them. So, like, for instance, with like Iroh's son. So, like, the family that Zuko's with throughout the episode, they have an older son who's off fighting in the war.
Right.
And it's kind of, you kind of see this parallel between, like, you know, his older brother and him, and the kid and his older brother being, there's a parallel between, like, Zuko and his older cousin. Like, oh, his cousin was off fighting in the war, and he's, like, kind of, like, looks up to him and whatever.
Right,
and then at the end, they come in and they're like, oh, we heard news that your son might have died or whatever. And that's played right next to the part where they find out that Iroh's son died.
Mm.
So it's kind of like, there's kind of like this parallel going on between the flashbacks and what's happening currently. So I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a unique way of displaying it to make him, to, like, reveal why he's, like, so invested in the family.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But I also, one thing I will mention, though, the fight scene at the end was really cool, because most of it is these guys using, like, some earthbending, but also their weapons and stuff, and Zuko using nothing but his swords. Like, I love that opening part where he just like grabs it from the sheath and just pulls it out far enough just to smash the guy with the bottom of the sword, like that movement, and then he, like, starts fighting. But he doesn't obviously use the firebending until the end. But
and wasn't there a moment where he's lying on the ground, like, basically unconscious, and he flashes back to, I guess it might have been something with Iroh. I don't
possibly
quite remember.
Yeah, I don't remember, like, all the details, but yeah.
It was something like, it was something along the lines of, like, be yourself, stop hiding behind what you want to be, or, like, something about just, like, being yourself and going through life. And then he finally uses his firebending.
Yes. And then he proudly declares who he really is.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a really important, like, moment, is, like, especially because he's like, I'm and rightful heir to the throne, which realistically, yes, he is. And by the end of the show, that actually sort of, comes to fruition, right?
But at that point, debatable.
Yeah. Right. Okay, we really should move on. We have, like, 3 more episodes, and we're already at, like, just over an hour for the recording. But that's okay. Whatever. I mean, we chose to do 10 episodes at a time,
We dug this hole, now we shall lie in it.
Right, exactly. It's fine. So next we have, Zuko Alone is one of my favorite episodes. I love it. But yeah, anyways, next we have The Chase.
Right.
So this is sort of where everyone comes together at the end of the episode. So throughout the episode, Azula and May and Ty Lee are tracking them and tracking the gang. All they want to do is get some sleep. They can't, because they keep getting closer and following them more.
And this is this to the whole point where tiny subplot of Toph arguing with Katara because she's not helping the others out.
And Toph leaving the group and meeting Iroh, having a conversation with Iroh, which convinces her to go back with the group. Which is he's, I like the whole, like, she's like, I can take care of myself. And he's like, I helped you. She's like, you don't need to help me pour my tea. And he's like, I helped you because I wanted to.
I poured your tea because I wanted to pour your tea.
Not because I think, not because I think you're helpless and need it. And he goes, I love that like they meet and have no idea who each other is. Like she has no clue that Iroh is like part of the fire, nation royal family, and that he's like the father of or the uncle of Azula and Zuko, and he has no idea that she was traveling with the Avatar. Like they have no clue who each other is, and they just have this conversation. I love that. It's
they
cool.
all meet up later, and they both notice each other, and just like, oh,
hey, it's that guy. But yeah, and then so the whole episode sort of converges onto this one point where everybody sort of meets in this like small deserted town, I guess.
Right.
And there's
it's Aang and Azula standing off, and Zuko jumps in just before the fight happens.
And then
they're all fighting.
Then Iroh shows up, and then everybody else is there. And then it's everybody against Azula, because I think Mai and Ty Lee are busy. They're not there at the moment. I don't remember why.
There's a really nice fight scene between Sokka and Katara and Mai and Ty Lee.
Oh, yeah. Really Ty Lee does her, like, thing hitting Sokka, so none of his limbs are working, and then she tries to do it to his head, and he's like...
Headbutts
he smacks her, and she's like...
Sorry, but no.
No. His head is too strong for her. I love that. But, yeah, so I like so then everything converges. Azula's like, you guys have beaten me. But then she shoots at Iroh. And
right.
There's like, so like when I was watching it, I was like, oh, maybe this is when like, I'm like, maybe Zuko is going to kind of like start to become friends with them at this point. Cause they're all there. And then Katara's like, I can help him. And then then Zuko just kind of goes, no, leave, get out of here. Cause he just, all he cares about is his uncle, which I actually really like this little detail here where it's like, Zuko is there. The Avatar is right next to him.
But he's just worried about his uncle.
All he's worried about is his uncle. Like, I'm like, which is like, I don't know. I just like that little detail.
There's not even a moment of him considering it. It's just
like,
uncle.
Get out of here. I want to save my uncle. Like, he might die. I want to help him. Although Katara could have helped him better. Yeah. But, Zuko's just really emotional and didn't think about that. So
Zuko's not the brightest, but he's got...
Yeah, that is definitely true.
He's got good intentions sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. But no, this is a really cool episode. I like it a lot.
I also like the moment where after Mai and Ty Lee like escape, or Sokka and Katara like run away from them or something like that. Ty Lee's just like, was it just me or was that guy pretty cute?
Oh yeah, there's this weird thing where Ty Lee is just really like Sokka throughout the show. So I really like, and then there's that one really funny moment. There's like the four of them, Aang, Katara, Sokka, and Toph are like ready to fight Azula and the other two girls, Mai and Ty Lee, and Toph's just like, we can take him 3-on-3, and Sokka's like, I can still fight. I can fight. And then she's like, no. She's like, wait, no, did you mean 3-on-4? And he's like, oh yeah, I didn't count you because of no bending and all. And he's like, I can still fight. Oh, sorry, 3-on-3 plus Sokka.
3-on-3 plus Sokka.
Oh, and then Katara, the stars are really beautiful. Too bad you can't see them, Toph.
And the rock sends her flying onto Sokka.
Love it.
Was it this episode or the one after where Iroh wakes up from being attacked by Azula and he's talking with Zuko?
That's the next one. Yeah.
Oh, well, he says I know you're gonna argue with me and say that I need to get along with her, but we have to take down my sister. And I was just like, no, she's crazy and she must be stopped.
No, she's crazy and she needs to go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the next one. So, which we can move on to because we don't, I mean, we're at an hour and 10 minutes about now. So we might as well. So, The Chase is a really good episode. Next, we have Bitter Work, which is the training episode.
Right.
Because it's not only Aang
Earthbending.
training with earthbending, it's also Zuko training with Iroh.
Yeah.
And learning lightning redirection.
Hell yeah.
So
they kind of established like even the Avatar has difficulty learning elements because it's the opposite of his element, which is a very neat little detail.
Not only is it the opposite of his original element, it's also the opposite of his natural personality.
Yeah.
So, because his personality is naturally like avoid things, try to avoid the conflict, find clever solutions to things instead of like facing things head on. And if you notice, that's always been his thing. Is like even in the beginning of the show, it was always he left. He was trying to avoid being the Avatar. He didn't just face the issues head on, like solid as a rock. So that's why it was so difficult for him to learn. And you see him, progress and try to learn that throughout here.
And like at first he's not doing too well. And then he seems to do like very well. Like there's a lot of scenes where Toph just like nods at him like, yeah, good job. But then there's the boulder rolling down the hill at him and he just can't help himself from getting out of the way.
Yes. Right, because that's like his natural response. Because the thing is, if you notice throughout that whole training montage, he never actually does any actual earthbending. He's training
just
with the element, but he doesn't actually do any bending. So he doesn't do any actual earthbending until the end. And when he fully like stands his ground against the saber-toothed moose lion.
Yeah.
Because originally he was like trying to jump out of its way and stuff, and then it was like he
stood his ground and just blew it back with airbending.
He's like, sorry, I won't leave you again, Sokka. And he just goes, and then he goes up against Toph and he starts yelling at her for how much of how mean she was being, like, and blah blah blah, like whatever. And she's like, you just faced off, you just stood your ground against a giant beast. And even more impressive, me. You can do it now. And then he earthbends, and it's really cool. And I love the whole Sokka stuck in a hole thing too.
So good.
It's
with
so
the
hilarious.
Baby moose lion.
His boomerang kind of flies out. He kind of tries to use it to get the food.
Now come back, boomerang.
Now come back, boomerang.
What episode was it where he lost his boomerang and he's like, well, what am I supposed to do now? I'm no longer the boomerang guy. And then finally they get like ambushed.
They get it back.
Yeah.
The people who took it, and then he finds it. The people who stole his boomerang, he finds it again, and he's like, "You do always come back." That was Avatar Day.
Ah, right.
So yeah. You do always come back, boomerang. Ah, jeez, I love it. His boomerang is just the best. So yeah, and then there's like, I love the part where like Aang finds him and he's talking to him about how like difficult the earthbending is, and he goes, yeah, really. It's like it just really puts me in an uncomfortable position. Uncomfortable position. I know the feeling. It's just like, it really puts me between a rock and a hard place. Now, how about that?
I love how Sokka's just listening to it, and he doesn't directly say anything. He just like makes little comments like, "Oh, really?" Just full of sarcasm.
Oh, makes you uncomfortable. As he's stuck in a little squished into a little hole that he's stuck into. Uncomfortable position. Yeah.
And how the entire time he's like promising the universe that he'll do these things if he can get out of the hole,
which is not true.
This little cute lion cub, moose lion cub is just.
I'll give up meat. I'll give up meat and stop being stop being sarcastic. That's all I got. That's pretty much my whole identity. Sokka, the meat and sarcasm guy. I'll become Sokka, the veggies and straight talk fella.
Or when he first gets stuck in the hole and he's looking at the little creature and he's just like, "You are one very lucky meat creature."
You're so cute. But unfortunately, you're made of meat. I love it. And he starts to bond with the creature. The creature's on his head, hanging out and everything. Love it. Anyways, you also get Zuko learning the lightning redirection. And I really like that Iroh explains how he... So Iroh invented lightning redirection, and I love how it explains how he invented it. He invented it through studying all of the elements. He learned it through studying water bending.
Right.
So it kind of shows, and he explains to Zuko it's really good to have a well-rounded view of everything.
And also gives you a new perspective on exactly how bending works. Because it's lightning bending is fire bending, but it's based off of the techniques in water bending. So you realize that they can mix all these things together and create new stuff.
Exactly. It's cool because, and then the way he's explaining it, and he's how you have to feel the energy flow through your arm and through your stomach, because your stomach is the center of your chi, and then out the other arm. But don't let it go through the heart, because that could kill you.
I love that entire monologue of him just, you need to go in through the arm, down into the stomach, back up and out through the other arm. He makes it very clear.
Yes. The stomach, which is known as the Sea of Chi. Or in my case, it's a vast ocean. But then I love Zuko is so doesn't think things through. So he's very determined. He's all right, let's do it.
I'm ready with real lightning.
Are you crazy? I'm not shooting. I'm not going to shoot lightning at you.
Then I'll
hopefully he's like hopefully you never have to use this technique ever. But I'm not gonna He's that could kill you. If you do it wrong, it could kill you. He's no. And then he's I'm gonna go find my own lightning. He's so.
Okay, man. Do you really want to try to get yourself killed right now?
But then there's that moment at the end. This is the scene that the episode ends on. Is him standing out there in the lightning. He's like, shh, give me what you can, universe. He's like,
you've never held back.
You've never held back before, but now I can throw it back. And then he's he ends with him just kind of there in the thunderstorm, crying, breaking down, mental breakdown. It's it really hits you, because it's that whole idea of he just constantly gets pushed down by everything. He constantly fails, constantly is getting pushed down, and this is his breaking point with that. Because there's also the point earlier in the episode where he's because originally Ira tries to teach him just lightning bending in general,
but he can't
not the redirection, and he shoots, and it just kind of he blows up in his face, and he goes, and he's just it just blows up in my face, everything always does, and it's you just kind of feel bad for him. You're yeah,
Zuko's a broken boy.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I've mentioned this before, where that's one thing that makes him such a appealing character, such a a character that you want to root for, is because he constantly fails, and he works hard to push himself to keep going.
Right.
And this episode is him sort of breaking down, him sort of really breaking down over the fact that he constantly fails. He's kids get it's that, you never held back before. Throw some lightning at me, I could throw it back. I love the closing scene of the episode. It's really just, it's a really poignant moment. I love it.
It really, They really hit you hard with the Zuko feels.
Yes, it did. But anyways, one more episode and then we're done.
The Great Library.
So the library is the next episode. And this episode, so like the last episode honestly would have been a better stopping point because it's sort of like it ends sort of the first section of the season, which is all about the main story is Aang trying to find an earthbending teacher and then trying to learn earthbending. That episode is the one where he learns earthbending.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the season shifts its focus. And this episode is the one that starts that because this is the episode where by the end, they suddenly have their goals for the rest of the season, which is to find Appa, to get to Ba Sing Se, and to warn the Earth King about the eclipse. And this is where all of those plot points begin. Mm-hmm. So one thing I do have to say is the library is really cool. Like I love the like lore of the library, and Wan Shi Tong, he who knows 10,000 things, is a really cool, like just design wise and just really cool.
It
just
is.
This
I
giant
have to
owl.
say though, in the game that I mentioned, that library is terrifying because it's like a maze and you're running from that owl that's like flying at you at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it's really creepy when like his neck stretches out.
Yeah.
It's like,
it looks like a dragon.
But no, there's a lot of really cool things in this episode. But yeah, and also it just obviously the conclusion of the episode is the Appa is lost. And it's interesting because it's like you suddenly realize, like, obviously it's emotional because it's like Appa's a good, you miss Appa, and also like Aang
They're
really
stranded in the desert.
Well, right, but also like it's even beyond just the emotional loss of Appa. Yeah, again, it's like, wait, how are they gonna, like, they're in the middle of the desert, mm-hmm. and Appa is how they travel. So it definitely makes it more interesting because, like, until they find Appa again, all their traveling is by foot. Like, so it makes it more just more difficult for the characters. Yeah. It's more, like Lord of the Rings, where they're just always traveling by foot.
Yeah, and like they never had difficulties traveling before. And so it's neat that they now get to use that and experience it as like a plot point.
Yeah, which is really felt in the next episode, but we'll get into that.
Well, going back a bit, though, it might be best to talk about like outside the library first, mm-hmm. with Toph. One, explaining that with the way she sees with the vibrations, that the sand makes everything fuzzy. Mm-hmm. She's just hanging out with Appa, and then eventually the library starts sinking, and she holds it up. I know she's a good earthbender. She holds that entire library up.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. It's like, but it's like in that scene though, because it's like she could save Appa, but if she saves Appa, the library will sink, and it's either save them or save Appa. Mm-hmm. And so she has this like difficult choice, and then she's like holding the library, and there's that moment she's just like, sorry, Appa. Like, if you feel really sad, it's like, oh my gosh, like it's a difficult choice.
And she's like, she tries to save him and help, but her vision is too blurry, so she can't get a good shot off. Yeah, she's just forced to anchor herself into the library again.
Yes, yeah, exactly. This is a really good episode. There's some good comedy moments too, like when they're looking for the library, and it's one of the classic Toph blind jokes. They're just sitting there looking for it. There it is. That's what it'll sound like when one of you spots it.
And she waves her hand in front of her face with a big goofy smile.
I love it. But yeah, it's a great episode. And again,
There's also
it's
they
the
establish
episode.
the sand people, thieves, whatever you want to call them, earlier in the episode when they were checking out Appa, and they get driven away, and then they come back and take Appa.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. Like they established that early on that like they're like interested in Appa at the beginning of the episode, which you kind of like look at and you're like, oh, that's nothing important. But then at the end of the episode, yep, there's so many like little things that are like seem like they're not that important, but then they come back and they're really important. I love, I love a lot of those little details. Yeah.
Let's see. I guess then there is inside the library.
Yes. Yeah. They have to present a piece of knowledge to Wan Shi Tong to like be allowed to go in. Like the professor's like, here's this book, and he's like, oh, very good. And then
waterbending scroll.
Katara's like, waterbending. Yes, very nice. And then Aang's just like, here's a wanted poster of me. He's like, I guess that counts. Sokka, here's a special knot. Ties the knot.
You're not very bright.
You're not very bright, are you? Which is interesting though, because it's like Sokka is smart, but he's also dumb at the same time.
He's goofy.
Like sometimes you're like, sometimes he's yeah. It's just
even in this situation, he uses that to his advantage. Because like he quickly reveals that he's like acting that way at the moment. He's like just trying to get the bird off his back so he can find stuff in the library.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. Also, I like that it's like the weird thing where like the professor's just like stays behind. They're like, Professor, come on. He's like, no. There's enough knowledge in here to keep me busy for a lifetime.
I don't remember. It wasn't at the end of this episode, but I could have sworn I remembered like going back and like revealing that he's just hanging out with the spirit in the library.
So there's a part in Legend of Korra where somebody goes to the library and there's his skeleton laying on the ground. Like it's his clothes and hat and everything, but like surrounding a skeleton.
I could have sworn I thought there was like some sort of flashback or like a phase into, what this person is doing now at the end of the series or something like that. Where he's just like hanging out, reading books and, being
not
helpful.
In the show. But yeah, that is interesting. Well, here's the thing. I kind of feel bad for him because like they are trying to like convince the owl that like we're not going to abuse the knowledge here, whereas he legitimately doesn't want to abuse the knowledge. He's literally just there to explore because he enjoys the knowledge. Whereas everybody else kind of like ruins it for him in a way.
Yeah.
Because like
poor little scholar.
Because now the owl's after him and after all of them, but like he didn't do it. Like he literally was there.
He was just excited for having books to read.
Knowledge for knowledge's sake, Whereas the other characters were the ones who wanted to get knowledge to get an advantage over the Fire Nation. He just was there for the knowledge. So you kind of feel bad for him in that way. It's like, but at the end, he's able to just kind of sit there and read the book. So you're like, you know what? He's happy. So I guess it's fine.
They don't really establish whether or not he, whether or not the entire place fills with sand or not, though.
I don't think it does. I think it sinks.
I don't think it would.
From what I remember from the Legend of Korra, like it's only in like a quick scene or whatever. I don't think it's in it very much. I don't remember exactly. But like it's not filled in. Like it's buried, but it's like not filled in with sand. So the guy just kind of hung out there reading until he died, pretty much. So there you go. But yeah.
There's also the whole thing where they see where the Fire Nation stuff was, and it's all burned.
Yes.
It's like, oh yeah,
because
of course
Zhao.
they would do that. They're the Fire Nation.
Well, it's implied that was Zhao too, because notice how in the last season it was like Zhao had said like how he went to the Great Library and that's how he learned about the
spirits.
Fish, that the fish were the moon and ocean spirits.
The fish spirits.
Yeah. So it was probably Zhao who burnt all that information. When he was there.
Remember how Zhao was like, yeah, you can definitely see that.
Mm-hmm.
He would definitely do that.
Right, exactly. Because he doesn't have like any respect for like the spirits and stuff, as we know, because he tried to just kill one of them. He's more like fully on like, whatever brings the Fire Nation victory, So if burning all that information helps the Fire Nation, he'll do it, So it makes sense, yeah. All right. Anyways, I feel like we should probably get ready to close. That was episode 10 of the season. So we're at like about an hour and a half of this recording. So that's great. This is our longest podcast so far. Look at that. I figured it would take a while because I knew like there's a lot to talk about with season 2.
Yeah, it's a good season.
We should probably decide what movie we're watching next week, but let's try to make it a quick discussion so we don't take way too long. So some of the options that we had before, again, were Whiplash, Goodfellas, Indiana Jones. You had mentioned adding like the Monty Python movie, so I added Monty Python to the list. And then we had the bad movies list as well that we could pull from. I kind of want to watch Whiplash because I haven't seen it in quite a while, but it's up to you.
Which one is that again?
So, it's about a jazz drummer. It's pretty. It's more like of a drama kind of thing, but it's like very intense. So it's basically like it's difficult to explain exactly. Like it's not a complicated story necessarily, but it's like the way it's done is really interesting.
Well, let me preface it with this. You know my whole thing with music where I'm like, I don't know, I very much don't get a lot of it. So will that interfere with this at all since it's a jazz-based thing?
I don't know. I feel like you'll be able to feel the intensity of it. Of what's going on, so I feel like you can still get something out of it.
Because if it's like a thing that's solely based on music, and I'm just like listening to music stuff for the whole thing, I'm gonna be like,
no. So it's more so the story is about how you can kind of like push yourself too far to gain perfection or like be pushed too far. It's like where's the line? Like when it comes to like art, where's the line of being pushed to the breaking point too much, and like it's more focused on that. Like it's done through the medium of like jazz music and like a drummer. But it's like it's more feeling the intensity and the emotion and the interesting sort of thing that's going on. So I don't know how you would feel about that, but
I mean, I don't have a problem with watching it. I will say I'm not especially interested in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Yeah, it's so it's how long is it? I'm trying to like find the length of it so you can get an idea. An hour and 47 minutes. So it's not like super long either, which is nice. So like it's not like a huge time commitment or anything.
Right.
But it's one of like one of my favorite movies. I've only seen it like once, but like because like when you hear like, oh, it's about a jazz drummer, it doesn't sound that interesting. You're like, oh, okay, like yeah, somebody learns to play drums.
Ooh.
But it's like you almost have to watch it to really like see why it's as like why it's great, why it's considered to be a great movie.
All right. We'll watch it.
So
and if anything, if I don't like it, then that'll be equally as interesting to talk about.
Yeah, that'll be something to talk about because I love it, and that could be like a nice like we differ because like I feel like a lot of times we share the same opinions on these things.
Yeah, because we've been watching stuff that we both like. So
because like when I said Lord of the Rings, I kind of like I didn't know if you would like Lord of the Rings, but I kind of figured you would. I was like, that seems like something you would like.
D&D and RPGs,
right, exactly. I was like,
Lord of the Rings.
I was like, you like D&D and stuff, and like I'm like, I kind of figured that you would like that type of movie. But so yeah, Whiplash came out in 2014, directed by Damien Chazelle. That's right. It's got Miles Teller in it, and what's the other actor? The two main actors, J.K. Simmons. That's it. J.K. Simmons, Miles Teller. It's got other people in it, but those are like the two main ones. Yes. So cool. We will watch Whiplash before next week, talk about it next week, and then the week after that, we will talk about the rest of season 2 of Avatar.
I'm almost hoping that I hate it just to see how the podcast would turn out.
Yeah, I mean, don't go in expecting to hate it. Just go in without any expectations. Just go in being like, I'm watching a movie. We'll see, and just enjoy it or don't enjoy it. Try to get authentic reaction. But
right,
you know, because like I feel like if you go in expecting something, you it kind of warps what your opinion ends up being.
If you want to like a movie, you're gonna like it. If you want to hate it, you're gonna hate it.
Right. Like there have been times where like I've sort of convinced myself to like a movie that I realistically didn't like to say that like, oh yeah, I kind of like that, even though I thought it wasn't good, but like, because I wanted to like it. And then there are times where it's like the opposite has happened where it's like, you know,
that's like video game movies. Like none of them are good, but they are enjoyable.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Anyways, we should probably end this. This is has been the longest podcast we've ever done, which is fine. That's fine. There's no time limit on here. It's just my general idea is like, close to an hour, but like there's technically no time limit, so it's fine. It just means I have more to listen back to when editing. So yay. So anyways, we're going to end it here. So if you want to listen to the podcast, there are multiple places you can listen to it. You can listen to it on my YouTube channel, which is NimTV. That is youtube.com/c/NimTV, NIMTV. You can also find it on some audio platforms, that being anchor.fm/WABAN. You can find it on Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Spotify. And it is online every Saturday at noon. So so that way you know when to expect new episodes. So far, we've kept up with that schedule, so hopefully we're able to keep up with it. We should be able to. But anyways, thank you for listening to WABAN. I am Nim.
And I'm the goodest boy.
Goodbye.